Environmental enforcement is a really important part of environmental law. It's kind of the crunchy end, really, where you either implement the legislation or you don't. And compliance and enforcement is an area we know globally has been one that agencies have struggled with. They've struggled to get the requisite resources together to actually make sure that what is the last line of defence for the public interest is robust enough. So taking into account that and the concerns in New Zealand, we thought it's really time New Zealand had a systematic review of its environmental enforcement approach. And so that's what we're doing. So we're going across councils, the Department of Conservation, Ministry for Primary Industries, the Overseas Investment Office and Land Information New Zealand, and looking at what they do. So when you have a legal requirement and you're required to do something, and who's checking, and how do they make decisions on what they're going to enforce formally, and what do they do informally on the side, and so how do they make those decisions, and what are the outcomes for the environment? So it's lots of questions really bundled into a relatively linear sounding title. Well, the short-term output is of course the report. that's top of mind at the moment, and of course we'll do a speaking tour once we've kind of gathered the key conclusions together, and because we want to be able to disseminate the information as far as possible, which is what we did with Pathways and Vanishing Nature as well. But the long-term outcomes, I think we want to present a very clear and very fair and empirical picture of what we're doing in enforcement, so that it can form the basis for not only our thinking about solutions, but other agencies thinking, well, okay, well when EDS did this, they demonstrated this very clearly, so what can we do about that? So it would be good if we can help set New Zealand on a path to much more robust environmental enforcement. There's obvious evidence of improvement over time. So the environmental enforcement that occurs now is far more sophisticated than 20 or 30 years ago. So that there are still quite serious issues, it would seem, in information management and reporting. So understanding what's been done, having sufficient transparency so that the public know what agencies are doing on their behalf. And there's other issues around capacity, political interference, whether the legislation actually provides a coherent basis for enforcement. So these are all the issues that we're kind of starting to tease out. We want to celebrate the good stuff. We want to say we're doing really well with these things, but over here we've got a problem, and so my job is to really work up solutions to what those problems are. Vanishing Nature was quite an ambitious project. It was much bigger in scale to Pathways to Prosperity, but what we wanted to do was really demystify the issue of the loss of nature. So it's something that I think is very abstract to most people. They don't really understand what it is, kind of don't really understand what it means, and they don't really understand how it comes about. Pathways to Prosperity was an extension of Vanishing Nature, in that it sort of sliced off a bit of the problem pie that Vanishing Nature had identified, and said, all right, one of the most acute interfaces of the loss of biodiversity is between decline in biodiversity values and development. So we all expect that in human society, development is important, infrastructure is important, providing for people's economic well-being is important. But on the other hand, you've got this irreversible loss of nature happening. So what we wanted to do was really dig into that particular area and come up with some practical and tactical, sort of, I guess you'd call them near-term solutions on what people could do about that. The Law Foundation has been a major funder of all of the 3 publications we talked about. When I think of the Law Foundation as a funder, I think of them as brave. They're a brave funder, and they're not afraid of the crunchy questions. And I think they value, or appear to value, at least to us, research rigour over political palatability. And of course, environmental protection is inherently contentious. So the space that we work in is always about this acute and difficult contest of values. And that scares some people and scares some funders, because they kind of want fluffy stuff that's something that, you know, their constituents will value. The Law Foundation, they're like, well, actually, we just want you to build a really powerful argument. And I think that's important, because New Zealand's in desperate need of that kind of critical thinking and analysis. And so we're very, very happy to have their support.